Norway in Nasrec. Just yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa joined growing calls for the forum to be extended for a longer period. He said the 10-year extension of AGOA will give certainty to investors across the whole continent. To help us understand how this US-Africa trade pact has helped the continent, I'm joined by Dr. Azar Jammine, who is the director at Econometrix. Thank you for making time for us, Dr. Jammine. How has the continent benefited from this AGOA pact over the last, 25 years or so?
Yes, I was thinking following your previous interview where the person said that this AGOA was a form of colonization. Well, it may be so, but basically, I mean, it really can only benefit African countries because most countries, and including the United States, conduct trade with a process whereby they try and protect their own industries in their own countries by imposing tariffs on imports from other countries in those particular products. And what happened with the formation of AGOA, the United States sought a way of assisting its influence in Africa by forming a pact whereby it would no longer impose tariffs on imports of certain products from Africa. And in this way, it would hope that it would gain favor in terms of trading with Africa to gain a march on the likes of China and Europe, etc., who also trade a lot with Africa. This was a way of the United States trying to improve its competitive advantage in order to facilitate more trade with Africa with itself than was the case with other regions. So Africa, those countries who have been part of AGOA for the last 23 years, have benefited by being able to export certain goods without having any tariffs imposed on them by the United States.
Mm-hmm. Have there been the desired export and employment gains, though, generated by AGOA? Whether you look at the automotive sector, food and beverages, transport equipment, or even leather and textiles, because there are those who feel that AGOA has not lived up to all its expectations.
I don't know what those people are actually looking for. Yes, most certainly, Africa could have exported those goods to other regions of the world. Whether they would have done as well or not by exporting to those other regions is a moot point. But the fact is that relative to what they were exporting to the United States, they could export those goods more cheaply, in other words, without having tariffs imposed on them, than other countries in the world would have been able to export those goods to the United States. The second point to question is whether a sufficient number of goods were incorporated into AGOA, and that is one of the issues that African countries have been calling on the United States to do, that is to widen the net of AGOA. For example, with South Africa, about 30% of our exports to the United States benefit from AGOA, and I suppose quite rightly, South Africa could ask, well, why can't you extend the removal of tariffs on a wider range of goods than just those that are encapsulated in AGOA? But the fact is that the 30% of our exports to the United States have not carried those import tariffs that might otherwise have been carried and that many other countries outside of Africa have to pay for when they try to export similar goods to the United States.
So given the calls we've heard for reforms around this trade pact, what reviews and reforms do you think are necessary? In other words, how can this trade agreement be changed to be more impactful? Because even the U.S.'s trade officials have conceded that AGOA hasn't really met the expected targets since it was launched in 2000. I think it was the Deputy U.S. Trade Representative, Constance Hamilton, who made that concession. So if we're talking about changes to make it more impactful, to benefit us so that we see the most out of it, What do you think are the changes that are necessary?
Very simply put, try to extend the agreement or to change the nature of the products that are duty-free that are exported from Africa to include those where the impact on employment and living standards in Africa would be greatest. And I suppose there's a host of products that could be incorporated into the agreement that are currently not incorporated into the agreement that could be imported into the included in the agreement that would probably create more jobs than the current agreement is in place. At the moment, for example, the agreement basically is confined from South Africa's point of view to exports of automobiles, citrus fruit, wine, and a couple of other agricultural products. Let's widen it to include other goods, maybe textiles, maybe machinery and equipment, something that the United States can import and do so and without having to impose tariffs on the export of those goods from South Africa and other African countries. The second, I suppose, request would be to try and widen it to more African countries. At the moment, only 30 actually manage to form part of AGOA. But then that also depends on the countries involved, whether they would want to be included in such an agreement. Ideologically, and it's quite clear from your previous interview that there's an ideological opposition with doing any business with the United States on the basis that the United States is capitalist and exploits African countries on those grounds. Well, then why be part of AGOA at all? But yes, there are. The third area that clearly President Ramaphosa and other African leaders are trying to get the United States is create greater certainty. Instead of just having this being reviewed every 5 years or so, extend the review period to 10 years or 20 years so as to allow those countries to feel that they can carry on with business as usual for a longer period of time than worrying all the time as we've been doing in South Africa this year, that will they carry on and extend the agreement beyond 2025 or not? Yeah. And clearly, President Ramaphosa has asked, let's extend it to at least 10 years or maybe even longer.
Mm-hmm. Do we need to start thinking about an inclusion of, other critical minerals in the pact? I mean, I'm sure that could perhaps help prop up investment in the sector with some significant growth potential, especially given that mining investment has been declining.
Yes, now that's precisely what I think is, when you ask of what further benefits, how can AGOA be expanded, that is precisely the kind of discussion that we should be having. Can we incorporate more of these minerals upon which, I mean, there's no point in including minerals in AGOA if there are no tariffs being imposed on importation from Africa by the United States of those minerals. If there are no tariffs, then there's no subsidies. There's no point. There's no way in which you can scrap the tariffs either. But certainly, on a general basis, let's widen the net of products, and you've deliberately and expressly included certain key minerals in that. I'm not an expert to know which of those minerals that could be incorporated into AGOA, but that would certainly benefit us and other African countries. Agricultural products, the same thing, widen the net of the kind of agricultural products. Obviously, the United States has its own lobbies internally if they themselves extract those minerals or agricultural products who might resist that. That's the kind of discussion that needs to be negotiated. Ideally, we would like to have an AGOA kind of agreement with other regions of the world, including Europe, including China, including the rest of the world. So let's exploit this situation and try and build on it, rather than to say that it's of no use to Africa, which is nonsense. I don't want to overstate the use it is, because We're really talking about a limited number of products that are incorporated into AGOA, but we do benefit from that.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a huge benefit, Africa does derive a benefit from it.
Mm. I saw that some members of the U.S. Congress were pushing for, I don't know, some greater level of reciprocity from AGOA's beneficiaries. Are we likely to face some conditions here when it is renewed?
We were facing huge conditions, including geopolitical ones regarding our associations with other countries, such as Russia. But I think the temperature has cooled significantly since the beginning of the year and the Lady R debacle. And we're now, there are some areas of reciprocity that one might, but you've got to bear in mind that the United States is acting here from a position of strength. Africa is not in a position of strength, and that is why Africa is so keen to extend the period by which for which AGOA is in place, etc. So it's possible that the United States could use it as a lever to obtain certain concessions from Africa that go beyond the realm of just trade and may incorporate certain political provisions. That becomes a little more problematical, I would imagine.
Oh, Dr. Azar Jammine, thank you so much for making time for us.